Hey guys, it's Bree here at Blossom and Branch Farm, and today I'm going to talk about all the things that are going on in the world in terms of agriculture, how it's affecting us as small farms, as big conventional farms, and also as home gardeners, some of the things that I am adjusting this year based on current events. Let's go. This is going to be a pretty unedited video. I'm just going to kind of be spewing things at you. I'm going to first go through kind of how I'm adjusting my garden plans, my flower farm plans, how this is hitting small farms, market farms, and then at the end I'm going to be talking about how it's affecting larger scale conventional farms like ours at home in Minnesota. Okay, first things first, please stay respectful in the comments section to everybody. We are fostering a community of unity, so don't be aggressive with other people, please. Obviously, lots of stuff going on. For context, it is now February 22nd, 2025, and things are going on, you know, daily. Things are changing. Who even knows what's happening anymore? Open up the news and things are crazy. If you see me looking down, it's not because I have a script. I just wrote some notes because otherwise my brain gets a little bit ahead of itself. So what am I doing this year here at the farm? So normally we do grow both things. We grow flowers and we grow produce, but for the most part, what we grow is flowers. So usually our ratio here is probably 80% flowers, 20% produce, and most of the produce that I grow is usually for my family. I sell some, like tomatoes, cucumbers, garlic, and peppers, but for the most part pretty much just for home production. This year I'm probably changing that a little bit. So some things that I'm anticipating running into problems with are there are going to be, I foresee, increasing costs in things like eggs, which unfortunately we have a few chickens, but not really enough to be producing eggs and selling them. We are suburban, and so we just aren't zoned for that many chickens, so we really can't help with that, unfortunately. We do have our own chicks, and we are taking some steps with bird flu. We are being mindful of free-ranging. Right now we are not free-ranging our birds, so they are pretty much confined to their run, which is a pretty good space. We are putting some barriers in place just to kind of separate the wild birds from our bird flock of laying hens, because we don't want them to get sick. We don't want to get sick, and we don't want to lose our egg production. We're not locking them in yet. We're not doing any of that, but we do have a place we can lock them in if it gets really bad. So I'm not panicking about bird flu, but egg prices are just continue to go up, so that is something we are thinking about. In terms of the garden, we are growing more produce this year because I'm anticipating having costs go up due to things like deportation of farm workers. And this is not, again, I do not want to get into arguments of whether you think that is the right thing to do or not. But the reality is that a lot of farms, especially in California, where we get a lot of our produce here in the U.S., there's a certain visa you can get as a farm worker and just come in and work seasonally and then go back. I'm not sure what's going to be happening with that program this year, so remains to be seen. And I am foreseeing costs going up for things like strawberries, things that you have to be hand harvested, and so we are growing more of that stuff. So I'm going to go over kind of our list at the end, and I'm also going to show you all the things that I've already started, so you can kind of keep tabs and maybe some things you want to add to your garden plan for this year. Yes, I'm seeing those prices go up. I'm sure all of us are having a little bit of concerns about just tariffs and how that's going to impact pricing on produce, things coming from Mexico. So yes, I'm growing a lot more food at home. Again, I'll go over the list of all the things that I am growing, and I have a certain focus for the things that I'm growing at home. I'll talk about that too. All right, so from a small farm perspective, it's still hard to say because some funds have been frozen, some have been unfrozen as of yesterday. The USDA is very much in flux. NRCS grants were frozen. EQIP, which is a loan program for things like infrastructure and small tunnels for small farmers, so that farmers are able to provide food in the shoulder seasons, those things have been on hold. We had an NRCS grant that I already finished my project for, but those funds I have not yet received. So there is a fair amount of unknown. We just don't know yet, but it is impacting small farms. A lot of farms, when we do a program like EQIP, you actually start the project, so you sign a contract, and it's a cost share. So over a certain number of years, you get reimbursed for this project, but you have to put out the money in advance. And so people who are putting in high tunnels or putting in solar infrastructure or putting in mills and things for grain storage, those are often already paid for. And so they are waiting on their reimbursement. So if they've already put that output out, expecting to get paid back, and they don't get those funds, that could be pretty bad for small farms. So I don't want to assume and say that anything for sure is happening or not happening yet, because again, things are still in flux. The Ag Secretary, Brooke Rollins, has just kind of come out and unfrozen $20 million of funding, but that's not even close to what all of the grants that are supposed to be paid out are. So anyway, that's how it's personally affected us so far. We didn't have any equip projects. I don't do high tunnel growing, so nothing there, but I know a lot of small farmers did and are being impacted by that. So still waiting to see if our NRCS grant comes through. A lot of this was from the Inflation Reduction Act, and so that was signed by Biden, and that included a lot of grant funding for small farm projects, and particularly farm projects that would help with anything climate related. So a lot of carbon sequestration programs and conservation programs were funded through this IRA specifically funded account. So a lot of those were frozen. Anyway, TBD, but I do still see costs are going to be going up. That is my personal opinion of what's going to be happening. As far as flower farming, what I am doing is, I mean, unfortunately, it's kind of late in the season. We plan our season the summer before, really. We kind of look at what's doing well and what our plans are going to be when we hit the end of the season. So a lot of farmers already have their plans in place. It's a little bit late to be changing crop plans at this point, but we saw during COVID that actually we thought that people would be cutting back on discretionary spending on flowers based on COVID, and that didn't really happen. Actually, people still spent money on flowers. We lost wedding retail, but everything else still kept going. So flowers still did pretty well during that time. Now, depending on how bad the economy gets or doesn't get, flowers, you know, we may or may not be impacted. If people are having to really save money for food and food prices are going up and tariffs make everything else go up, then we could definitely see flowers getting cut from people's discretionary spending. So it's good to be growing some produce as well, I feel like, to kind of hedge those bets. Tariffs, yes. You know, people talk a lot about tariffs and how it impacts farmers. So that's how I'm going to segue into talking about our home farm in Minnesota, because tariffs don't really directly affect us here on our small market farm scale. And what I mean by that is, first of all, I'm regenerative, so I don't rely on a lot of synthetic fertilizers. But secondly, I don't trade on a commodity global market, so I sell locally. So what really impacts me is consumer spending, right? Is how people are feeling about the economy, whether people have discretionary money to be spending, and what our food security looks like. That's kind of what dictates the markets for us smaller growers. But when we start looking at, for example, the project that we're doing at our home farm in Minnesota, which, yes, we are still doing it. I haven't said much about it because we've just been kind of in this planning stage, and we have a lot of exciting partners that we are working with on it, so stay tuned for that. But it's a different animal when we start looking at big, conventional scale, large farming, and that is because they're dealing with large commodity crops. So corn and soybeans are the predominant ones, and it's kind of the system of agriculture in this country has funneled farmers into growing those crops. But we grow more crops, more corn and soybeans here in the US than we can use domestically. That's how efficient our growers have gotten and how good they've gotten at, you know, using what equipment they have and scaling up and really being able to pump out a lot of grain and commodity crops. So what that means is that we rely on the global market. So when a conventional farm goes to sell their corn and soybeans, tariffs matter much more for them than it does for me. So we saw this in 2018 with tariffs with China. And what happened was we put tariffs on Chinese goods. They reciprocated. We got into a little bit of a trade war with them. They stopped buying most corn and soybeans from the US, and instead they turned to Brazil, which is actually a really big up and coming, in fact, probably surpassing the US on efficiency in grain production, and they turned there instead. And they, in 2020, promised that they would ramp that up and start buying from us again, but they never reached the levels that they said that they were going to. So When that happened and those tariffs got put into place, it put record numbers of small farms out of business, American family-owned farms. When that happened, that administration did triple the amount of farm subsidies that they were paying out to try to make up the difference of the loss that those farmers were taking. However, even with the tripling of subsidies, it still didn't really make up the difference of how much they lost based on the trade war and tariff situation. So American taxpayers ended up having to pay a lot of money to bail out the farmers, and unfortunately, a lot of them still ended up going out of business. So it was really unfortunate. And still, a lot of markets still haven't fully recovered from that. Now, as I'm saying this, by the way, doesn't mean that I endorse current conventional agricultural methodology, right? So when we're talking about monocultures and the fact that everyone is selling corn and soybeans, no, I don't think that that is the right way forward. And I think that there needs to be looking at that system and how we have gotten farmers kind of pigeonholed into having to grow those two crops in order to be profitable. It's something that we're going to talk about this year with our farm, because we're thinking about growing a different crop, but we can't send it to a mill. There's not a mill anywhere near. So if we grow oats, for example, there's not an oat mill nearby to even sell those oats to. So there's so many supply chain issues that keep farmers kind of pigeonholed into having to grow these two commodity crops that makes it more complicated than it sounds. So we're going to be talking about those things kind of as we get into the season. So if you're interested, make sure you stay tuned for those conversations. The point is that they are much more subject to those tariffs and the effects of those tariffs. And the same is true for example, Canada. So because we are now putting tariffs on Canada, and there will be reciprocal tariffs, and that is going to impact our fertilizer prices. So most corn, soybean farmers in this country use potash from Canada to fertilize and get a good grain crop. And if those prices go up, they're already operating on such a slim margin that between fuel costs, which are likely to go up, and fertilizer costs going up, between those two things, they are probably going to be taking a loss on crops this year. Typically, subsidies will make up a difference, but we don't know what's happening with subsidies. And again, I'm not making this video political, because I think we really need to unify and just talk about the issues just as they are. But what I do want to say, and my concern, is that Project 2025, which so far, at least in everything else that's been going on, Project 2025, things have been put into place, have been followed so far. And if we look at the agricultural section of Project 2025, what it says is that they want to eliminate subsidies for farmers, and they want to eliminate crop insurance. So those are kind of the fail-safes. So what we want as a country is a secure food supply, right? And the corn that's grown here goes toward feeding cows, animal feed. It goes toward, things like cereals and grains and corn syrups and all kinds of different things, whether they're healthy or not. Okay, that's a whole different topic, but that is what it goes toward. And those things allow farmers to feed a lot of people. It allows farmers to feed a lot of people in different parts of the world through, for example, USAID, USAID, which, the farmers are taking a big hit on that being canceled as well, because they sold a lot of grain through that program. So farmers are kind of getting hit by a lot of different angles right now. And if they do choose to eliminate subsidies and crop insurance, that is going to be a massive hit. My concern is that we are going to end up bankrupting a lot of our American smaller farmers. And when that happens, my subsequent concern, specifically with what's put out in Project 2025, is that they are wanting farming to go corporate. They want to corporatize farming. I'm talking about the Heritage Foundation. They think that it will be more efficient if farming is done by corporations. But we know that corporations typically do what is best for the bottom line, not what's best for the planet, for the soil, which is something that a lot of farmers care about. And you may think what you want about conventional farmers, but most farmers do care about their soil. Whether they're going about it the right way or not, their main goal is to care about their soil too. They don't always, maybe they're not always financially able to do it in the best way, that you and I think that is the best way to do it, but they do care. Corporations, on the other hand, don't. And if you don't believe me on this, all you have to do is look up the fact that JD Vance is an investor in an app called Acre Trader. And Acre Trader is an app that is designed to sell American farmland to investors. This is such a, to me, conflict of interest for so many reasons. But here's what I'm going to say. We do not want farming to be corporatized in this country. It will not result in the things that the people if you're on this channel, you care about things like conservation. We have 20 acres in CRP. We don't know if those funds are going to be, we have a 10-year contract right now. We don't know if that's going to continue to be paid out or not, but it helps keep our water clean as it discharges into ditches. It helps keep native populations going there. It helps us to seed things that are beneficial for native prairie repopulation and bird population. And we don't know if those things are going to be able to continue based on what's happening. And the corporations are not going to care about the soil health. If you're here, I know you care about these things. Again, I don't want to get political because I want us to unite. I think that most of us want what's best for the soil, for our farmers, for our food supply, for our earth. I do think that there need to be changes made to things like farm subsidies and the way that they are done. I think that we need to start subsidizing smaller local growers, vegetable growers, produce growers. I think we need to start eliminating food deserts. I think we need to start implementing more programs like SNAP that actually people can pay me with SNAP. If someone comes to my market and buys cucumbers, onions, tomatoes, peppers, they can pay me with SNAP. I get the benefits of that, and most farmers do get benefits from SNAP. That's why it's part of the Farm Bill. And I would rather my tax dollars go toward feeding a hungry child, feeding a hungry family. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, how dare you be dependent on the system when we're bailing out billionaires and airlines. How to me, it's morally not okay to say we're going to bail out billionaires, but we're not going to bail out a family who can't afford to eat. You know what I'm saying? So I think we need more of those programs personally that are both going to help subsidize farmers who are growing in the right way, who are growing, I don't want to say in the right way, I take that back, who are growing in a way that aligns with conservation, aligns with regeneration of the soil, aligns with making healthier produce, and subsidizes that, and while helping to feed Americans, helping to reduce food deserts. I feel like that shouldn't be controversial, but I feel like a lot of things shouldn't be controversial, and here I am. So anyway, I promised you I would tell you what I was going to grow, so let's do that real quick. Okay, so I'm focusing on one thing with my garden this year, and that is predominantly things that will store well. So I'm trying to get better, but I'm not very good at canning. So things that need, canning and pressure canning, and I need to get better at it. I'm not great at it right now. But I like things that I can preserve, that I can just put into my unheated garage in the fall. And my garage doesn't freeze. It stays around maybe 40, hovers just above freezing. And I can keep things in there. So things like pumpkins, apples, onions, squash, winter squash. Those are the kinds of things. Oh, cabbage. Those are all great. Let me go over that list one more time. So for spring, things that I'm focusing on growing, and I've already started. My zone is 5-6. My last frost is May 15th to 20th. Okay. So I've already started my kale. I've got my cabbage, which again is really good for storage. If you look for storage varieties, cabbage you can store for 6 months. Amazing. And cabbage is really good if you just saute it with some butter and salt. It doesn't have to be like kimchi or sauerkraut or whatever, just sauteed cabbage. Anyway, okay, onions are great. Find a good storage variety onion. Make sure you're checking whether it should be a short, medium, or long day length variety based on your latitude. Okay, go to Johnny's Seeds and look at their onion selection guide, and that will help you. Find a good storage one. And then I've also started herbs. So again, kale, cabbage, broccoli, onions, and herbs are things that I've started already inside. And it leeks. Already up and going. Things that I'm going to be direct sowing And again, these are all for spring, for cold season, or for part shade beds also. Other things I'm going to be doing, but direct sowing, include my snap peas, my lettuces, my carrots, my beets, and my radishes. So I focus on things that my family likes to eat and that I know they will eat, in addition to things that will store well. Also be thinking about, I'm just going to say it, just think about things that take a lot of labor to harvest, because I think those are going to be the things we're going to see a lot of price increases on. Okay, for summer, the things I'm going to be starting indoors, but I haven't started yet, are peppers and tomatoes. I'm doing a lot of those. I'm also doing things like romas that are good for making, sauces and paste out of and canning. And so peppers and tomatoes, and then for direct sow for summer things. So if you don't have the capability to seed start indoors, some things you can direct sow in summer after your last frost are zucchini, pumpkins, beans, cucumbers, and then I would also start some potatoes if you can. And then in terms of orchard stuff, apple trees would be a great addition. A couple of apple trees. I would recommend something that like a Honeycrisp, because those store for a long time. We still have Honeycrisp that we're eating right now. They're just starting to get wrinkly here, so I'm gonna toss them in the food dehydrator. And then also strawberries. So if you can get some strawberry roots, Johnny's also has strawberry roots available, bare roots. I think they still have a bunch. And I think that's gonna be one that also is going to be going up in price between labor, and then also strawberries are one of the biggest accumulators of things like pesticides and also phthalates. So when they're grown in plastic, they accumulate a lot of that. So I like to grow them at home because I trust them more. And you can jam and, make delicious preserves and stuff with that. In terms of my flowers, if you're here for flowers, ones that I already have started here in February 20th are my lisianthus, my snapdragons, my feverfew, my chamomile, straw flowers, sweet peas, bupleurum, and then in summer, we're going to be direct sowing our zinnias, our cosmos, and our sunflowers. So that's kind of what I have started, what I have yet to start. I hope that is helpful for you guys, and I hope this was somewhat insightful. Again, please be respectful of each other. Please be respectful of me. I am but a lowly farmer with terrible YouTube production capabilities. Thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this video, remember to hit that like and subscribe and all that stuff. And if you want to take our regenerative gardening course and our cover cropping course, I'm going to link that below as well. If you want to help support us, it's going to be through that class. All right, that's it for my spiel. Remember to keep growing, keep learning, and build your community. See you guys around here next time at the farm.